Thank you for joining us for this first session of the Innovation as a COVID-19 Capacity Lever. This titled Self-Service, Helping Customers Who Can Help Themselves. My name is Michael Cassidy. I'm with Maxwell and Graves Solutions. Quickly on Maxwell and Graves, we're a consulting firm with expertise in servicing and collections. We primarily work with creditors who are looking to expand or otherwise enhance their strategy, operations, and performance management processes. I myself have been in the collections and financial services space for just about 17 years, both as a creditor and a servicer, and now as consultant. I am joined here with Simon Scalzo, the founder of Remitter. I'm excited to be covering this topic with Simon in particular. He and his company have really been at the forefront of this topic in the digital platform and self-service space for a number of years now. And he just has a great deal of knowledge and expertise in the space. I've been fortunate to work closely with Simon and his team as of recent, and just really excited to have him here. Simon?
Yeah, thanks, Michael, for the introduction. This is absolutely an area that's near and dear to my heart, and also Remitter. A little bit of background on Remitter. We started almost 5 years ago now in Australia and grew quickly throughout Australia, New Zealand, the US, and more recently in Canada. We support hundreds of companies across a number of industry verticals, including financial services, healthcare, telco, and utilities, in deploying just what we're going to be talking about today, that digital self-service strategy. So here today to share some stories and talk through the journey, and excited to be here.
Great. It's a good way to kick right off. So in order to do this topic justice, we have to first talk about the challenges that existed in collections and servicing well before COVID-19. Our industry has had a clear over-reliance on the voice channel. There are many reasons for this, whether it be regulatory concerns, legacy infrastructure, competing priorities, or maybe it's on a roadmap, you just really haven't gotten to it yet. Regardless of the reason, the reality is we haven't expanded digital and self-service to be too much more than make a payment, gather basic account information, and really just to do anything more than that, you have to speak to an agent today. The widespread impact of COVID-19 exposed this risk to a degree we probably hadn't thought possible. Consumers were impacted across the globe, regardless of credit, income, location. And at the same time, we saw quarantine orders come out across the US and globally, hitting all industries hard, and including one that this industry was so reliant upon, which is call centers. So at this most critical point where consumers were clamoring for assistance, we saw speed to answer in the call centers and abandon rates go through the roof. Inbound call volumes were doubling and in some cases tripling, while the call centers were attempting to manage through their own challenges with office closures, ensuring the safety of their own employees, and migrating to work from home, which was for most a brand new thing. The unfortunate reality with this is most business continuity plans hadn't contemplated this type of disruption. They contemplated a lot of scenarios, but most of the solutions were really based on the assumption that you could reroute volume, call volume in particular, or be down for a minimal degree of disruption. In the case of COVID-19, that just wasn't the case for most creditors and BPOs. Simon, as that backdrop is there, you've been talking about self-service and digital platforms versus traditional for quite some time now. What are your thoughts on the state of dependency on voice and how self-service could both complement it and supplement in some cases?
Yeah, so absolutely. There's quite a large dependency on voice as a core piece to organizations' environment of collections, but what we're seeing is a real shift in consumers wanting that digital component, and that's because people don't want to answer the phone anymore. They don't answer if they don't know the number. So there is this real shift to, well, actually, we'd like to be communicated to in a digital manner, and we'd like that to be through our mobile phone. And if that is the case, we'd also like that to be actionable, so it can be effective, and we're empowered to do that. So we're absolutely seeing that shift in the environment.
When you're speaking about the shift, I know there's the shift in the consumer behavior. from what you've seen, whether directly related to COVID-19 or just maybe the momentum leading up to it, how are you seeing the creditors and the BPOs start to shift themselves to it, whether adoption or otherwise?
Yeah, look, I think in the current environment, it's actually fueled the shift. In the past, COVID-19 has really disrupted the traditional call center environment, and I think that's true by not being able to have that dedicated call center with all of those staff in the same room, and they've struggled to deliver that from a remote location now. So in the past, when there's been a disruption to the call center, what businesses have been able to do is, well, if it's a disruption locally, let's move to a global outsource. And that just isn't the case because COVID's affecting everywhere globally. So the call center and that traditional approach is really changing now, where businesses need to evolve and support that in some form of a digital manner. So we're seeing a lot of businesses, because of that reduction in capacity from the call center and that shift, in addition to that general shift in the environment where consumers want that digital form of communication, we're really seeing businesses move now to having a form of digital to support that. So it's quite exciting.
No, it is. That brings us to our next topic. Something we hear quite often when speaking with creditors or agencies is we have a digital platform or an omni-channel strategy. And your initial thought is, that's great. You jump in, you take a look. And what you find more often than not is what companies believe to be digital or self-service is really just to some degree leveraging SMS or email somewhere within their contact strategy. And in most cases, it's deployed in a very static way, similar to how they would deploy a left message strategy or a direct mail or otherwise. So it's very, very one-directional, very transactional. This channel today is more often than not used for payment reminders, payment confirmations, early delinquency reminders, which maybe there's some limited ability to respond in the same channel by the consumer. But in most cases, the call to action is really just make a payment or call us. Very much one directional. Simon, again, with SMS and email being important components of the digital and self-service strategy, what would you say is the real differentiator?
Yeah. So just to touch back on your point, you're spot on. Email and text reminders are ineffective. It's no different to mail. It requires the consumer to ultimately find their account details or call in and make a payment. So all of those friction points which currently exist, it needs to go well beyond that. Digital needs to be actionable, and it needs to be frictionless to be effective. So it needs to be very simple for a consumer to make a payment, removing all of the login components, smarter ways to authenticate the consumer, not a heavy login and password or a requirement to download an app. Needs to be frictionless, that's tailored to that individual, and offer lots of different things such as payment plans or perhaps partial payments, or if they're very late stage, settlements, and the ability for them to connect directly to their call center if they have more detailed questions. The consumer ultimately really needs to feel empowered and engaged with that medium that they're using, a mobile phone, for it to be truly successful.
I think it's when I think about a couple of the points that you made around frictionless and really just empowering the consumer, I think that gets really to the heart of that last bullet we have there too, which is when this is done. When this is deployed, I should say, in a more dynamic manner than just using SMS or just using it as a contact channel, it becomes more than just the OpEx save, right? When it's transactional, it can easily just be seen as a easy way to cut operational expense, throw out, get the low-hanging fruit from the call centers, and then pass it to your more your higher cost channel like voice. But when it's really frictionless, like you said, and when the consumer is really empowered, the self-service strategy really delivers value that's beyond just the operational expense. And I think that's such an important component, whether it's incremental, and we'll talk more about true results in the back end of this, but you start to look at benefits that are not just operational expense, they're not just payments, but there's a whole consumer experience aspect of it, which I think you touched upon. It's a seamless solution. They can self-service, they're comfortable with it. And I think that really, to the point you made, that really separates it from the traditional digital contact strategy.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there is absolutely, if it's done well, there should be an OPEX saving, and there is.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, it is more than that. It is about that ultimate customer engagement. It's an extension of the brand, which leads to lots of wonderful things, such as customer retention and then being a lot happier. So, yeah, you're spot on.
So for this next topic, we want to fast forward now. So we kind of laid the foundation for the environment. We talked about probably what exists today at most creditors, which I'm familiar with. But let's fast forward now. And now a company has a self-service or digital platform, more than a digital platform, a self-service platform or a collection website, whether they built it themselves, leveraged a third party to deploy it. We want to talk about that next most critical point, which is how do you get the customer to adopt to this strategy or this channel and engage with you? We know one of the biggest challenges in collections in particular is getting a right party contact. Even in a great economy, the contact is hard. It's hard to get. You can have the best phone agent in the world, and it doesn't matter if she can't talk to someone on the phone. It's not too much different when it comes to a self-service channel or a digital platform. You can have a wonderful website, all the functionality and the bells and whistles that Simon just talked about, and truly empower the consumer. But if you can't get them to leverage the channel and use it, the benefit is muted. So, Simon, obviously, you've addressed this with your own company. But what are the critical components to driving engagement at the consumer level?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Look, a really key piece to this is having to get that consumer engaged is creating something that is tailored for that individual, that profile of consumer. Okay, it's not going to be effective if this is just generic messaging. It really needs to be tailored functionality for that profile as well. So to do that, to enable that, you really need a platform that is driven by AI. You need the ability to profile the customers, predict what is going to work and what's not going to work for them. This really starts before the first message is even sent, right? So it's about using the right language that's going to engage with that profile of consumer. Having some insights as to when would be the right day and the right time to be communicating to that consumer, where it's their optimum window, where they're more likely to engage in action, delivering it in the right language. So understanding and tailoring the message for that individual's native tongue. And then most importantly, understanding their behavior. So how do they interact with the platform? How do they engage, or how don't they? And utilizing that data to then understand, well, what's the best next way to follow up? What should I be offering? What should I be saying? All of those elements to, again, take that consumer through a really tailored journey that's going to get or have the highest propensity to have them engaged and obviously facilitate that payment.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'll be the first to say when I myself was first introduced to a number of the digital platforms and these that had self-service offerings, it was easy to get hung up on, why is it different than the SMS that we talked about? Why, I have SMS, I'm reaching out in a digital manner, I have a website, and I think it's easy as a creditor to get caught up in that at times of, I have the individual parts in my current solution. Why is it different? And I think, Simon, the points you just made are really critical. It's the combination of all of those things that really really drives the value. It's not just knowing whether someone likes channel A versus channel B or channel C, or that they opened this message versus slightly worded. It's the combination of all of those things taken into account to really tailor it as you put it. And I think that's, again, that's something that can be underappreciated when you look at each of the individual parts versus the sum of them.
Yeah, great. And it's absolutely critical for driving results. You need all of those components. So certainly that's what we've seen.
So let's now jump into the delivering results. This, of course, this is why you would consider any new strategy, whether it be deploying a self-service solution or digital platform or anything else. You believe the existence of it will drive some value to your organization or to your consumer. So although OpEx is valuable, we've mentioned it once already, and it's certainly going to help you create your business case, so it cannot be underappreciated. I think Simon mentioned that earlier too, that ROI side of it. But the benefit I'll first talk about that really I focus on is the increase of unique contacts. And when a digital platform is done, not to say when it's done the right way, but when you really deploy it and you have empowered that consumer to use the self-service channel, you start to see more than just what we'll call a swap out benefit. That swap out is, the OpEx save, the consumer who would have otherwise paid or done the behavior you want, but is now doing it in this lower cost, in most cases, channel versus the higher cost. So there is a swap out. Those that would have paid in A are still going to pay in B, but it's a lower cost. But the one that really, I think from an operational and a strategic standpoint, you get excited about is the incremental. So those unique contacts that you just otherwise would not have gained had it just stayed in one static channel and gone through. And we do see the benefit of that. Deploying a digital platform with the self-service capabilities, you start to see that engagement start to pick up and start to see unique contacts picked up. I've seen some even in the late stage and or charged off recovery at the highest level, getting somewhere near 60 to 70% of the consumers to engage to some degree with the platform. That's not to say they all paid, but really to interact differently. So Simon, what else should creditors and or BPOs really expect from a benefit perspective when they're launching this?
Yeah. So, going into launching a digital strategy, expectations should be around, you'd want to see an uplift. I think that's critical. You'd want to see an increase in customer engagement. Obviously, we spoke about some OpEx and some cost and efficiency savings, and perhaps that may be being able to redeploy headcount within a call center. A digital strategy will never replace a current environment, but a good digital strategy should make all of those elements a lot more efficient. So there should be those OpEx savings. You'd want to see a significant ROI from the digital platform. I know that we've seen ROIs as high as 20x. So you'd want to see some big numbers, collection increases. We've seen increases up to 280% if it's delivered in the right manner on the right platform. So leading into this, there should be some expectations around the results of what you see. But as we spoke about earlier, your expectation should also be around that, the ultimate customer engagement, which is critical. So you need to see both of those elements.
And a point Simon made there on the complementary to voice, I think it really is valuable. And one of the items we have on this slide too, it really is complementary. There are aspects which could supplement, but for the most part, it's complementary to that traditional voice channel. And I know something, Simon, I've heard you speak about as well, which is where there's an OpEx save, that can allow companies to reinvest elsewhere. And when you're reinvesting back in the voice channel as well, if the self-service solution is effective and it does pick up a lot of the not transactional, but the repeatable transactions, the items that the consumer can self-service, it allows the company to invest in that voice agent. So when the consumer has to speak to someone, they can really they can really get all the information they need. They can talk to someone that really is well prepared to handle the one-offs, the exceptions to it. So I think that's just a wonderful point of, if done effectively, is complementary. It allows you to invest in the quality of the agent, in the quality of the service they can deliver. And that consumer has now really gone through, and in many cases, certainly in the fintech, where from origination, all of the happy paths, they've leveraged this digital platform. And then even when they get to collections where there is a challenge, there's a hardship in some cases, they can continue that service, but when they want to speak to someone, they can get to someone quickly who is well prepared to take care of their issue. So I think that complementary to voice and the reinvestment of back into that channel is just a fantastic benefit that you really don't think about.
Yeah, agreed.
So with this last topic, what we wanted to focus on was, in these other considerations, is what should companies be thinking about when they're preparing for this journey down the digital or self-service solution path. The thought here was, what can we give folks listening to go home with, something to really think about as they kick off, or as if they're already down the path, just something to help them along it. Simon, we threw up a couple key areas that I know you felt were critical to that journey, and really helping companies just start to think about and articulate, hey, here are the steps we have to take, here are the actions that we have to have covered. So I don't know if you want to kind of jump into some of this first.
Yeah, happy to. So I think there's a lot of considerations here outside of all of those items that we've already spoken about, so that you need to be conscious of when considering to deploy a digital strategy. The first and foremost is around the technical component. So is there a heavy lift required to deploy? So I think that's a critical component. Everyone has different priorities, and from a technical perspective with your own team. So this will be about introducing a new element, and what we don't want is something that is heavily resource intensive, that would be very hard to just try and get live. So you want to make sure that from a digital rollout perspective, or even just that initial proof of concept to see what it does, that it is quite easy to deploy. It's not a heavy technical lift on your side and your tech team side. So that's a critical component, I think. Other considerations would also include compliance. Compliance is, as we all know, very important. So do the right guardrails exist in the system? Obviously things like opt-outs, time zone sending, security and compliance is also very big as well. We're talking about passing customer details across to a platform. We want to make sure that the highest security compliance is held by that provider. So that's critical, which is typically PCI Tier 1 externally certified. So which is key. How does the reconciliation process work? So it'd be good to get an understanding of that. So what happens when a consumer pays on the platform? How does your system get updated? Or what happens when a consumer pays through the traditional ways? How does the platform get updated? So, there's, when a consumer has paid or called in or set up an arrangement, those communications cease. So that's critical as well. And then I think outside of all of that, what data do you obtain, right? So the platform would be communicating to that consumer and engaging with them. What other data elements are being obtained that can help you understand more about your customer? So how are they responding to texts or emails? What's their behavior? What's the information around their behavior? There's even things like GPS data that can be obtained. And how are we using that data to learn even more about our customers and risk profile them? So I think there's some considerations outside of those typical, well, what sort of results should I expect? I think these are weighted equally and should be considered when looking to deploy a digital strategy.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. I, Simon, I think you touched on some of this, but we've talked about pushback on traditionally, I'm going to say from the creditor side, but where there is pushback, and I think to a large degree misconceptions. Is there one or two that you think really stand out that is the common reason why we can't, that is really just fueled by a misconception?
Yeah, look, I think the one that stands out the most is perhaps for me, or what we hear along the journey, is that tech time to deploy, and thinking that this is perhaps even a swap out of a technical component that they have, and a swap in, or a heavy burden on an integration. And that simply isn't the case. From our experience, we've been able to deploy within 1 to 2 weeks a proof of concept. So the technical burden, there's always a misconception that that's a heavy lift, and it just isn't, to showcase the results and build that business case of, okay, this is what we're seeing from our customers. Our customers are being engaged. The results are hitting our expectations. So, I think that would be an area for me that stands out.
Yeah, the only other one I'll mention, I think we touched on it earlier. I think it's only a solution for the low hanging fruit. I think that's one that really minimizes the real benefit. I know I mentioned it earlier in this too, of that population that we've seen get deemed or flagged as a no contact, right? So where it went, whatever your organization deems it went 30 days through your strategy, consumer never responded to the channel, probably voice. We absolutely see benefit, and I've seen it with clients that have deployed it. I've seen it when I was a creditor myself. You absolutely see benefit where that population is responding. And again, it doesn't mean all of them are going to have the means to pay. That's often why they were hiding to begin with, but they are responding. And I think that is a misconception. And we've certainly seen over the past couple of years as pretty dynamic solutions have come out where it leverages the digital side of it, and it has a component that's self-service. We've seen consumers that have just reappeared. And I think that's one that again, as you start to think about it, that can really get overshadowed, which is, well, it's a low hanging fruit and we already have email and SMS, and then limiting it to that benefit. So that's another one. I'm always excited to see the positive results in that side.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's throughout the entire cycle, right? And that's why it's critical to have an engine driving it, and that engine driven by AI to understand how that consumer is interacting. So different offers can be provided to them. So, we've seen our solution deployed even pre-due. Hey, your account's due in 5 days, or click here to pay, to 1 day old. And during that process of maybe we're only facilitating that full payment. As that journey starts to grow, maybe there's short-term payment plans being offered, and throughout that communication journey, maybe there's partial payments, all the way to getting to late stage where we're offering consumer settlements. So all of these elements are critical along that path, and will facilitate an engagement ultimately with that consumer. So yeah, there's different things offered to ensure that consumers do get engaged, and you're right, and we will get engagement across that full delinquency cycle from 1 day old to 180 days old, just by having different offers and different tailored messages being sent to each of those customers.
So that brings us to the end of our topic here. I know we've covered a lot throughout this. Simon, I had you do the heavy lifting here and talking the most, but if you want to start with your parting thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. And I think there's a lot to consider here. And I think that extends, beyond sending that digital message. For me, some of the key factors involve that digital message being actionable. So, and really understanding what is the functionality that would be offered to your customer, and how does that functionality change along that communication journey? I think another critical component here is the platform really needs to be driven by AI. So we need to be sending tailored messages to each customer, understanding their profile, understanding how the customer behaves with the platform, so we can work out, well, how do we best engage with them? You should be setting in expectation for results. So you want to have a clear expectations of what the product should bring to the table after it goes live. What sort of uplift should we see? What sort of ROIs should be delivered from the platform? And then I think some of those other factors that I touched on are equally important for consideration around what's the time to deploy? Is there a heavy lift on the tech side? Is security and compliance addressed through the platform? And how will that reconciliation process work? I think as a parting point, underlying all of these considerations is, why are we doing it? And taking a step back, we need to be conscious it's how consumers want to be communicated to. So underlying all of this is people don't want to answer the phone anymore if it's a number they don't know. So businesses really need to evolve. They need to evolve to a form of digital communications. Otherwise, we're simply living in the past.
No, it's all really great points. The only thing I can add to that really is, as we do look at, I'm going to call it the aftermath of COVID-19, but the reality is the impact of COVID-19 on both the consumer and the economy just isn't yet known. And I think there's a lot of, to a degree, false sense of security. I think with maybe the immediate impact not being as severe as banks or otherwise may have modeled, and that can allow people to think maybe we weathered the storm. And I think, Simon, to a lot of the points you made, I think if we look at the fact that we don't yet know what the degree of the impact will be, and that the consumer really does want to be empowered, they want to have a seamless interaction at a time where they're probably most stressed and most concerned. My only really parting thought is, really to where you can use this unfortunate event as an opportunity to really expand and enhance your own infrastructure, because it does add value. It's certainly for all the reasons that Simon went through, but also on the consumer side. We just don't know where this thing is going yet. We don't know how long it's going to take to return from an economy perspective. And I think at the heart of it all is it's just the preferred channel. So I really think that's behind all of it. With that, we want to thank everyone for joining us in this session. I want to thank Simon for not only his great insight, but for carrying me through this one. And lastly, the team at IA Institute for pulling together really a great event, and helping all the folks here, really move forward at a time that we really need to start looking ahead and moving forward. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Michael.